In a quiet little town tucked away in the southern part of the country, there lived a young girl named Amara Lewis. She was born different from the other children. While most kids learn to see the world through their eyes, Amara saw it through sound. She was blind from birth. Doctors said she would never see the colors of the sky, the faces of her parents, or the way the sun painted gold across the fields. But what she did have was something no one could teach, a gift for feeling life through the rhythm of sound. Her parents were humble people. Her mother worked as a cleaner at a small clinic, and her father fixed radios and old speakers in their garage to earn a few extra dollars. Money was always short, but love was never missing. Amara's mother, especially, believed that her daughter was meant for something great, even if the world refused to see it. Every night she would hum old gospel songs while holding Amara close. The baby would smile, tapping her tiny fingers in perfect rhythm. Even before she could talk, she could hum back melodies exactly the way she heard them. As Amara grew older, her world was made of sounds, the rustle of leaves, the laughter of children outside, the creak of their old wooden floor, and the rhythm of her mother's voice as she spoke. She learned to walk by counting her steps and touching the walls. She could tell which neighbor was walking by their footsteps. She could even tell which bird was singing outside her window. Her hearing was so sharp that she could hear the difference between a kind voice and a cruel one. But not everyone saw her gift. Some people in the town whispered behind her back. "Poor thing," they'd say. "She'll never have a normal life." Children avoided playing with her, unsure how to act around a girl who couldn't see. Some even teased her, saying things like, "How can you play hide and seek if you can't see?" Amara never answered back. She'd just smile softly and listen to the sound of their laughter fading away. Deep inside, she promised herself that one day they would hear her too, but for something far greater. Her parents couldn't afford fancy toys, but they made sure she always had music. Her father would turn on the old radio in the evenings, and Amara would sit right next to it, her ear almost touching the speaker. She would listen to every note, every beat, and every voice that came through. She didn't just hear music, she felt it. Sometimes she'd tap her hands on the table, creating her own rhythm. Other times she'd hum along, matching every pitch perfectly. It was as if the songs spoke directly to her heart. One rainy afternoon, Amara was about 8 years old when something happened that changed her world. Her mother came home carrying a small, dusty piano stool. Behind her was an old man pushing a broken upright piano on a cart. The piano's paint was peeling, some keys were missing, and a few strings were out of tune. Her mother had bought it for almost nothing from a local church that was closing down. "It's not pretty," her mother said with a gentle laugh, "but I think it still has some songs left in it." Amara ran her hands along the rough wood, feeling every scratch, every dent. Her fingers found the keys cold and uneven. She pressed one and a soft, shaky note filled the room. Her face lit up. "Mama, it sings," she said, her voice full of wonder. Her mother smiled. "Yes, baby, it sings, and now so will you." From that day on, the piano became her world. Amara couldn't read music, of course, but she didn't need to. She learned by listening. Every time a song played on the radio, she'd find the same notes on her piano. It took patience, sometimes hours, but she never gave up. Her mother would find her late at night, still sitting at the piano, her head tilted slightly as she listened carefully to each note. "Amara, baby, it's time to sleep," her mother would say softly. "Just one more song, Mama," she'd reply. Over time, her small house was filled with melodies. The neighbors who once pitied her began to pause outside her window, listening to the sweet sounds floating through the evening air. Even the children who used to tease her stopped by, curious to hear the blind girl who could play any song she heard. Her father started calling her "my little echo," because every sound she heard came back even more beautiful. But Amara wasn't satisfied just copying songs. She started creating her own. Soft tunes that told stories only she could understand. Songs about sunlight she had never seen. About people's faces she could only imagine. And about dreams that glowed in her heart like stars in the dark. When she turned 10, her school hosted a small music show. Each student was asked to perform something in front of their classmates. Amara wanted to play her piano, but there was a problem. The piano was too heavy to move, and the school didn't have one. Still, her mother talked to the principal, who agreed to borrow a keyboard for her. The day of the performance, Amara sat quietly backstage, listening to the other kids sing and play. She could hear the nervous tremble in their voices, the sound of shoes tapping against the wooden floor. When it was finally her turn, someone guided her to the stage. The audience fell silent. Some whispered, "That's the blind girl." Others simply waited, unsure of what to expect. Amara's fingers touched the keys. For a brief moment she hesitated. Then she began to play. A soft, gentle tune filled the hall. The melody flowed like water, calm and beautiful. It carried sadness, hope, and something more, something no one could quite describe. When she finished, there was silence again, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that happens when hearts are too full for words. Then the applause came, loud, long, and real. That was the first time Amara realized her music could touch people. But it wasn't the applause that made her smile. It was the feeling that for the first time people didn't see her blindness. They heard her soul. Life wasn't easy after that. Her father passed away when she was 12, leaving her and her mother to survive on very little. But even in grief, Amara found comfort in her piano. The notes became her tears, her laughter, her voice. When she played, she felt her father beside her. Her mother would often sit quietly, eyes closed, listening with pride and pain mixed together. "Your father would be so proud," she'd whisper. As Amara grew into her teenage years, her love for music only deepened. She dreamed of learning from real musicians, of performing on big stages, of showing the world that blindness could not silence beauty. But dreams cost money, and money was something she and her mother barely had. Still, she kept practicing, believing that one day, somehow, her music would find its way to the world. Sometimes she'd go to the park and play on a small keyboard she borrowed from school. People would stop, listen, and drop a few coins into her case. She didn't do it for money, she did it for connection. Every time someone smiled or closed their eyes while she played, she felt like she had shared a piece of her heart with them. But not everyone appreciated her gift. Some would walk by without a glance, and others would whisper things like, "Poor girl, wasting her time. She'll never make it." Those words hurt, but Amara never argued. Instead, she'd go home, sit at her piano, and pour all that pain into a new song. Her mother often said, "One day, baby, the right person will hear you. And when they do, your whole world will change." Amara didn't know when or how, but she believed her mother. Deep down, she felt that music was leading her somewhere. Somewhere far beyond the small town, the dusty streets, and the whispers of pity. What she didn't know was that fate was already writing her story. That one day she would stand before one of the world's most celebrated pianists, and that meeting would change both of their lives forever. For now, she was still the quiet, blind girl with a second-hand piano and a heart full of melodies. But in every note she played, in every tune she created, something extraordinary was growing, something the world wasn't ready for yet, but would never forget once it heard. And so, in that small house where love and music filled the air, Amara kept playing, day after day, night after night. Each song was a whisper to the universe, a promise that one day her sound would rise above the noise of doubt and be heard around the world. As the years passed, Amara grew from a shy, quiet girl into a young woman with a voice that spoke through her piano. Her music had become the language of her soul. Every morning before sunrise, she would sit by the window and play softly, letting her fingers tell stories she could never see but always feel. The neighbors had grown used to hearing her gentle melodies drift through the streets, and some even said the town felt emptier on days she didn't play. Her mother still worked long hours, cleaning offices and houses just to keep them afloat. But no matter how tired she was, she always found time to sit beside her daughter and listen. Sometimes Amara would ask, "Mama, do you think my music will ever reach beyond this town?" Her mother would smile, take her hand, and say, "Baby, if you keep playing from your heart, the world will find you." One afternoon, a letter arrived at their home. It came from the city, a big one far away from their little town. The letter was from the organizers of a national youth music competition. Her school principal had secretly sent in a recording of Amara's playing, and she had been selected to perform live. When her mother read the letter aloud, Amara froze. "They want me to perform?" she whispered, almost not believing it. Her mother hugged her tight. "Yes, baby. They finally heard you." It was a chance of a lifetime, but also a challenge unlike anything she had faced before. The competition would be held in a large concert hall, and hundreds of people would be watching. The thought of performing in front of strangers made her nervous, but deep inside, she knew this was the moment her mother had always told her about. For the next few weeks, Amara practiced endlessly. From dawn till night, the sound of piano keys filled their small house. She worked on perfecting every note, every rhythm, every feeling. She didn't just want to play music, she wanted to speak through it. Her fingers were often sore, but she never complained. When her mother told her to rest, she'd just smile and say, "Mama, I'm not tired. I'm dreaming." The day of the competition finally came. They took a bus to the city, carrying little more than hope and faith. Amara had never been to such a big place before. The streets buzzed with noise, cars honked, and people moved fast like everyone had somewhere important to go. For Amara, all those sounds blended together into one big song of life. She gripped her mother's arm tightly, letting her guide her through the crowd. When they arrived at the concert hall, Amara could feel its size through the echo of footsteps and the distant hum of voices. The stage was enormous, and the audience filled every seat. Somewhere in that crowd sat musicians, critics, and judges, people who had spent their lives studying music. Among them was one man whose name everyone whispered about, Leonard Vance. He was a world-famous pianist, known for his flawless performances and strict opinions. People said he could make or break a young musician's career with just a few words. When it was time for Amara to check in, she could hear the sound of pianos coming from the rehearsal rooms. Every performer seemed confident, their music fast and sharp. It was a different world from her quiet home. Her mother gently squeezed her hand. "Just play from your heart, Amara. Don't think about them. Just think about your music." While waiting backstage, Amara listened to the performer before her, a young man whose fingers flew across the piano keys like lightning. The crowd applauded loudly when he finished. She felt her heart race. For the first time, she wondered if she truly belonged there. "What if they don't like me, Mama?" she whispered. Her mother brushed a tear from her cheek. "Then we'll go home and keep playing. But I believe they will love you." When her name was called, Amara stood up. Someone from the staff took her hand and guided her to the stage. The lights were bright and warm, and the room was so silent she could hear her own heartbeat. She reached out and found the piano, running her fingers across the keys like greeting an old friend. Before she could begin, she heard a voice from the judges' table. It was Leonard Vance. "A blind pianist?" he said, his tone calm but sharp. "This should be interesting." A few people in the audience laughed quietly. Amara's heart sank for a moment, but she took a deep breath. She knew how to handle silence. She had lived her whole life in it. Now it was her turn to fill it. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The first note rang out like a drop of rain in a still pond. It was soft, tender, and real. Then another followed and another until a beautiful melody filled the hall. Her hands moved gracefully, not fast, not loud, but full of life. She played a song she had written herself, one she called "The Light I Hear." It was her story, told through sound, the story of a girl who couldn't see the world but loved it anyway. As she played, something magical happened. The audience that had chuckled moments ago grew silent. The music flowed like a river, gentle but powerful. Each note carried emotion, pain, hope, love, and peace. Even people sitting in the farthest rows could feel it. Her face was calm, her eyes closed, and every movement of her hands looked like a prayer. When she reached the middle of her performance, the sound grew deeper. The music seemed to cry, then heal, then rise again. It was as if the piano itself had found a new voice through her. For the first time, even Leonard Vance leaned forward, his usual frown softening. He had spent his life chasing perfection, but what he heard now wasn't perfection, it was truth. When the final note faded, the hall stayed silent for a few seconds. Then came the sound of applause, gentle at first, then louder and louder until the whole room was standing. Amara didn't see it, but she could hear it. The sound washed over her like a wave. She bowed her head, tears quietly rolling down her cheeks. Her mother, sitting in the audience, cried too, her hands trembling with pride. Backstage, the other contestants congratulated her, some still speechless. One said, "You didn't just play music, you made us feel it." For Amara, That was the greatest compliment anyone could give. Later that evening, when the judges announced the results, Amara didn't win first place. The trophy went to someone else. But it didn't matter. Something far bigger had happened that night. People were talking, not about who won, but about her. The blind girl who played with her heart. A few days later, someone uploaded a video of her performance online. It spread quickly, reaching people across the country. Viewers left comments like, "I felt something I can't explain," and "She reminded me what real music sounds like." The video reached millions of views within weeks. Amara didn't even know at first. She didn't have a computer. It was her school teacher who told her, laughing through tears, "Amara, the world has heard you." Even Leonard Vance, the man who had doubted her, wrote a public message. He said, "I was wrong. That girl taught me that music doesn't come from sight, it comes from the soul." Those words meant more to Amara than any trophy ever could. From that moment, invitations started arriving. Music schools wanted her to study with them. Concert halls wanted her to perform. People wanted to know her story. But through it all, Amara stayed humble. She still played on her old piano at home, still helped her mother with chores, still practiced every morning before the sun rose. Fame didn't change her. It just gave her more people to share her music with. One evening, as she sat at her piano, her mother said softly, "You did it, baby. You made them listen." Amara smiled. "Not just listen, Mama," she replied. "I made them feel." That night she played again, the same song that had touched the world. The lights were off, the room quiet except for her music. Outside, the stars glowed faintly, and though she couldn't see them, she could feel their warmth. She smiled, knowing her journey was just beginning. What Amara didn't know was that this was only the start of something even greater. In the days to come, her path would cross again with Leonard Vance, the same man who had once doubted her. And when it did, the world would witness a moment that would be remembered forever. But for now, in that small house where her story had begun, the girl who once lived in silence continued to fill the darkness with light, one song at a time. Months passed after the competition that changed Amara's life. The world now knew her name, though she still lived in the same small house with her mother and the same old piano that had carried her dreams since childhood. The viral video had opened doors she never imagined. People wanted to hear her story, see her perform, and feel the same emotion that once filled that concert hall. But even with the sudden attention, Amara stayed grounded. She didn't see fame the way others did. To her, music was never about applause or trophies. It was about connection. When she played, she felt close to her father, to her mother, and to the sound of life itself. Every morning, she still practiced with the same discipline she had before anyone knew her name. Her mother would wake early, make breakfast, and listen from the kitchen as the piano filled the room. Sometimes Amara would stop mid-song and laugh softly. "Mama, the keys are getting old, they sound tired." Her mother would laugh too. "They're tired because you play them too much, baby. They need rest." But Amara never stopped. There was a new goal forming in her heart, a dream she hadn't spoken out loud yet. She wanted to compose something truly her own, a song that didn't just tell her story but told everyone's. Something that would reach every person who had ever felt unseen or unheard. Then, one day, a letter arrived that would bring her face to face with the man who once doubted her, the world-famous pianist Leonard Vance. The letter came from a prestigious international music event in New York City. It was called the Symphony of Souls, an annual gathering of the best musicians from around the world. The organizers invited Amara to perform as a guest artist, and the opening act, they said, would be none other than Leonard Vance himself. Her mother read the letter out loud, her voice trembling with excitement. "They want you to play alongside him," she said. "The same man who judged that contest." Amara smiled softly. "Maybe it's time we meet again." The weeks leading up to the event were filled with preparation. Reporters visited their home, fans sent letters, and musicians reached out to collaborate. But through all the excitement, Amara remained calm. She didn't see it as a competition. She saw it as a chance to share music, to learn, to grow. When the day finally came, Amara and her mother boarded a plane for the first time in their lives. The sound of the engine startled her at first, but once they were in the air, she leaned against the window, feeling the vibrations through the wall. "It feels like we're flying inside a song," she whispered. Her mother smiled. "That's because you can find music anywhere, baby." New York City was unlike anything Amara had ever experienced. The streets buzzed with life, the horns, the chatter, the rumble of the subway below. For her, every sound was a melody. Every corner of the city played a different rhythm. She felt alive, as if the city itself was an orchestra waiting to be heard. At the rehearsal hall, she met musicians from many countries. They greeted her warmly, curious and inspired by her story. When she sat down to play, the room went silent. Her sound was pure, her timing effortless. Even among professionals, she stood out. Not for her technique, but for the emotion behind every note. But not everyone was as warm. When Leonard Vance arrived, the room changed. He carried himself with confidence, almost pride. His tailored suit, his perfect posture, everything about him demanded attention. People whispered his name as he walked by. When he reached Amara, he paused. She could tell it was him by the hush that followed. "Miss Lewis," he said in his deep, smooth voice. "I must admit, I did not expect to see you here." Amara turned her head toward him, smiling politely. "Music has a way of bringing people together, doesn't it?" He chuckled lightly. "Indeed. I hope this time you've prepared something more traditional." She tilted her head. "I've prepared something honest," that was all she said. And that quiet confidence unsettled him more than any argument ever could. During rehearsals, Leonard played flawlessly as always. Every note precise, every pause calculated. The audience loved his control, his mastery. But as Amara listened, she noticed something missing. It was beautiful, yes, but it didn't feel. It was like watching sunlight through glass. You could see it, but never touch it. That night, back in her hotel room, Amara sat by the window with her small travel keyboard on her lap. Her mother was asleep in the next bed. The city outside was alive with sound. The hum of traffic, the faint music from a bar down the street, the distant laughter of strangers. She let those sounds mix in her mind until a new melody began to form. She played softly, almost whispering through the keys. The tune began with sadness, then slowly climbed toward something hopeful. It was as if she was painting light through sound. She called it The Heart Remembers. By morning, the song was complete. When the night of the performance came, the concert hall was full. Cameras flashed, and people from across the world had come to watch. Leonard Vance opened the event with his usual brilliance. His fingers moved like lightning, his expression calm and proud. The audience cheered as always. He bowed, confident and graceful, then stepped aside. It was Amara's turn. The hall grew silent as she walked to the piano, her walking stick tapping lightly against the stage floor. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, and somewhere in the front row Leonard watched. She sat down, took a slow breath and whispered to herself, "Play what you feel." Her fingers touched the keys, and the first soft notes floated into the air. The song began gently, almost shyly, as if it was remembering something long forgotten. The audience leaned forward, listening closely. Then, as the melody grew, so did the emotion. The music swelled with power, not loudness, but feeling. It was like a conversation between pain and hope, between darkness and light. Every key she pressed carried a story. Her childhood, her struggles, her dreams. The sound filled every corner of the hall. People closed their eyes, some with tears running down their faces. It was as if her music spoke directly to their souls, and Leonard, he sat frozen. He had spent years chasing perfection, but as he listened, he realized what she had found went beyond skill. Her blindness hadn't limited her, it had freed her. She wasn't performing, she was living through the music. When the last note faded, there was silence again. Not a restless silence, but one so deep it felt sacred. Then slowly the applause began. It started as a ripple, then grew into thunder. The audience stood clapping, cheering, shouting her name. Amara smiled softly, tears filling her eyes. She stood and bowed, her heart full. She couldn't see the faces, but she could feel their love. Her mother, sitting near the front, cried openly, whispering, "That's my baby." Leonard rose from his seat and walked to her. The applause quieted as everyone watched. He took her hand gently and said loud enough for the room to hear, "Miss Lewis, tonight you reminded me what true music sounds like." Amara smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Vance, I just played what I feel." He nodded, his voice low. "And that's what I've been missing all these years." The audience erupted in applause once more, louder than before. Cameras flashed and reporters captured the image of the world's most celebrated pianist bowing to the blind girl he once mocked. That night, Amara didn't just play a song. She changed a heart. She showed the world that music isn't about what you see. It's about what you feel. When she returned home days later, her small town welcomed her like a hero. But to her, nothing had changed. She still sat at her old piano, still practiced every day, still played for the joy of it. Her mother asked her, "How did it feel playing in front of the whole world?" Amara smiled softly. "It felt the same as playing here, Mama, because I wasn't playing for the world, I was playing for my heart." And once again, the little house filled with music. The same house where it all began. She didn't know it yet, but her journey was far from over. The song she played that night would go on to inspire millions. It would be played in schools, hospitals, and even in orchestras around the globe. But for Amara, the real victory was simpler. She had found peace in her purpose. The girl who once lived in silence had now given the world a sound it would never forget. The night Amara played at the Symphony of Souls would be remembered by everyone who was there. The world had watched a blind young woman pour her heart into music and move even the hardest hearts. News stations ran her story, calling it the performance that stopped time. Clips of her playing filled social media, and people everywhere talked about the girl who turned her pain into beauty. For Amara, though, the morning after was quiet. She sat by her hotel window, listening to the sound of the city waking up, the honking cars, the chatter, the rhythm of life. Her mother brought her a cup of tea and said softly, "You changed something last night, baby. You don't even know how many lives you touched." Amara smiled. "I just played what I felt, Mama." Her mother kissed her forehead. And that's what the world needed. A few hours later, there was a knock on their door. It was Leonard Vance. The same man who once doubted her now stood there, his voice gentle. "May I come in?" he asked. Her mother nodded and Amara gestured for him to sit. He hesitated before speaking. "Miss Lewis, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you my respect." Amara smiled softly. "You already gave me that last night." He let out a small laugh. "You know, I've played piano my whole life, yet I've never felt music the way you do. You see things in sound that I've never noticed." She tilted her head slightly. "Maybe it's because sound is all I have. When you can't see the world, you start to listen to it differently." He nodded slowly, thoughtful. "Would you ever consider performing with me again?" "Not as student and teacher. As equals," her smile grew. "If we play together, we'll have to do it your way and mine." He grinned. "Deal." And that was the beginning of something new, something neither of them expected. Over the next few months, Amara and Leonard began working together. He introduced her to orchestras, producers, and musicians from around the world. She taught him to listen differently, to hear emotion before perfection. Their partnership drew attention everywhere they went. People called them the unlikely duo, and every concert they performed sold out in minutes. But beyond the fame and applause, their friendship grew. Leonard often said she reminded him why he fell in love with music in the first place. "I used to chase flawless performances," he admitted once, "but now I just want to play something real." Amara laughed gently. Maybe we're both learning from each other. Their most anticipated event was a world concert to be broadcast live across countries. The show was called One Song, One World. It would feature musicians from different backgrounds playing together to show the unity of music. Leonard wanted Amara to lead the performance. She was nervous but accepted, knowing it was another chance to share her gift. When the day came, the hall was packed with people from every corner of the world. Cameras lined the walls and lights shimmered across the grand stage. Amara sat quietly backstage, her fingers resting on her piano keys. Leonard walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You ready, partner?" She nodded. "Let's give them something they'll never forget." The show began. Leonard played first, his fingers gliding gracefully across the keys. His sound was as perfect as ever, each note sharp and clear. But when Amara joined him, the energy in the room shifted. The melody changed from polished to powerful. It became a conversation between two hearts, one who had seen the world and one who had felt it deeply. The crowd was silent, completely drawn in. They played side by side, their music weaving together like a story told without words. It wasn't a competition, it was connection. As the final part of their duet began, the orchestra faded out, leaving only Amara's piano. She closed her eyes, letting the world disappear. Her song spoke of every struggle she had faced, every dream she had dared to hold. It climbed higher and higher until it felt like the notes themselves were flying. When the last sound faded, the room erupted in applause so loud it seemed to shake the ground. The audience rose to their feet, some crying, others smiling through tears. Leonard turned to Amara, bowed to her and whispered, "You've given me a gift I'll never forget." The next morning, news outlets from all over the world were talking about them. "The blind pianist and the maestro who found his heart," one headline read. Another said, "Amara Lewis brings the world to tears." The performance had been streamed to millions, and people shared how her music had healed them, comforted them, and inspired them to follow their own dreams. Letters poured in, some from children learning piano, others from people who had lost hope and found it again through her story. One letter came from a soldier who wrote, "When I heard your music, I remembered what peace sounds like." Amara was overwhelmed. She had never thought her music would travel so far. Her mother, always humble, just said, "See, baby, I told you. If you play from the heart, the world will listen." But while the world saw a shining star, Amara never forgot where she came from. She still returned to her small hometown whenever she could. The people there loved her dearly. They said her success made them proud because she showed what faith and hard work could do. One evening, when she was back home, she visited the church where her mother had bought that old broken piano years ago. The church had been restored now, and the community wanted to surprise her. When she entered, they unveiled a new piano in her honor. On the side of it, engraved in gold letters, were the words, "She heard the light." Tears filled her eyes as she touched the keys. "I don't deserve all this," she whispered. Her mother smiled and hugged her. "Yes, you do. You gave people hope, and that's the most beautiful gift anyone can give." Amara sat down and began to play softly. The sound filled the church just like it had when she was a child. Only this time, her music carried the strength of everything she had lived through. Months later, Leonard invited her to record an album with him, one that blended both their styles. They spent weeks working in the studio, creating songs that told stories about love, loss, and life. During one late-night session, Leonard turned to her and said, "You know, Amara, I used to think music was something you mastered. Now I know it's something you feel," she smiled. And feelings never need perfection. The album became a massive success, topping charts in multiple countries. But Amara didn't care about the fame. What made her happiest was when people said her songs made them feel alive again. Soon, invitations began coming from schools, music programs, and charities. Everyone wanted her to speak, to inspire young people who felt unseen. She accepted as many as she could, especially those involving children with disabilities. She would sit with them, talk to them, and often say, "Close your eyes when you play. That's how you really see the music." She founded an organization called the Echo Foundation, a program that gave free instruments and lessons to children who couldn't afford them. She said her dream was to make sure no child's talent went unheard, just because they didn't have the means. Leonard became one of her biggest supporters, helping fund concerts and scholarships. Their friendship remained strong, based on respect and understanding. They often joked that music had introduced them in the strangest way possible. A taunt turned into a triumph. Years later, during one of their interviews, a journalist asked Amara, "What was the hardest part of your journey?" She thought for a moment and said, "Believing I was enough. People told me what I couldn't do because of what I couldn't see. But when I stopped trying to prove them wrong and started just being myself, that's when everything changed." The audience applauded. Leonard, sitting beside her, smiled proudly. By now, Amara had become more than a musician. She was a symbol of hope. Her name was spoken in schools, her songs used in hospitals and events worldwide, but she never let the fame cloud her purpose. Every time she touched the piano, she played with the same heart that once filled her small home. At the end of every concert, she would say one thing before leaving the stage: "Don't wait for the world to see you. Make them hear you first," and every time, The crowd would rise, cheering, clapping, and crying all at once. Amara had become a living melody, proof that even in darkness, there can be light if you listen closely enough. Years passed, and the world came to know Amara Lewis not just as a pianist, but as a symbol of courage, humility, and faith. Her music had touched millions, but what made her story timeless wasn't her fame. It was her heart. By now, she had performed in countries she could only once imagine. She had played before kings and queens, presidents and children in small schools. Yet no matter where she went, she carried the same calm grace, the same soft smile, and the same words she always told herself before every performance. Play like it's your first song and your last. Despite the endless invitations, Amara never forgot where she began. Her hometown had built a small music center in her name, and every summer she returned to teach the children who dreamed of becoming musicians. She would sit among them, listening to their laughter, their offbeat rhythms, and their honest excitement. One afternoon, a little boy named Theo asked, "Miss Amara, how do you play so well if you can't see the keys?" She chuckled softly. "Because I see them here," she said, placing a hand over her heart. "Music isn't something you look at. It's something you feel." The boy smiled shyly. "Then I'll learn to feel too." Moments like that made Amara's heart full. It reminded her why she played in the first place. Not for applause, but to show others that limits only exist when you believe in them. As time went on, Amara's friendship with Leonard grew even stronger. They had become family in many ways. He would often call her my greatest lesson, and she would laugh and reply, "You mean your toughest one." They shared an unspoken understanding, two souls connected by the same language of music. But life, as it always does, began to change. Leonard started to grow older and weaker. Years of travel and performing had taken a toll on him. One day, during a rehearsal, his hand trembled slightly on the piano keys. Amara noticed but said nothing. She just placed her hand gently over his. "Let me take this part," she said softly. He looked at her with grateful eyes. "You were always meant to," he whispered. A few weeks later, Leonard invited Amara to his home by the sea. It was a quiet place where he had spent his youth, surrounded by books, old records, and the sound of waves crashing in the distance. When she arrived, he was sitting near the window, his piano beside him. "I wanted you to come," he said with a weak smile. "There's something I need to tell you." Amara pulled up a chair beside him. "I'm here." He took a slow breath. "When I first met you, I saw you as a challenge, someone who could never reach the level I demanded. I was wrong. You were the one who lifted me. You gave me music again." Tears filled her eyes. "You taught me too, Leonard. You gave me the courage to play without fear." He smiled gently. "Promise me something, Amara. Anything. When I'm gone, don't stop. Don't let silence win. Keep playing for those who can't. Keep teaching them to listen." She nodded through her tears. "I promise." That night, they played one last song together, a quiet duet they had written years ago. The melody was slow and tender, like a conversation between two hearts saying goodbye without words. When it ended, Leonard said softly, "You see, music never dies. It just changes hands." Not long after, Leonard passed away peacefully. The world mourned the loss of one of its greatest pianists, but Amara felt something deeper, the loss of a dear friend, a mentor, a brother in music. She played at his memorial, performing the same piece they had written together. The hall was filled with people, but for Amara, it felt like it was just the two of them again. Her notes floated through the air, gentle yet full of emotion. When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. That night, she whispered a quiet prayer, thanking him for believing in her when he didn't even know he did. After Leonard's passing, Amara took a short break from performing. She spent time with her mother, walking in the garden listening to the wind move through the trees. But music never stayed quiet for long inside her. One evening, she sat down at her piano and began to play. The melody came naturally, soft, healing, and full of peace. She decided to record it and called it "For Those Who Listen." The song spread like sunlight after a storm. People said it made them cry, smile, and remember lost loved ones. It became one of her most loved pieces. Months later, Amara was invited to speak at an international music forum in London. The hall was filled with young musicians from all around the world. She stood on stage, calm and humble, her cane resting beside her. She began, "When I was a child, I used to sit in a small room with a broken piano. People told me I would never play, never succeed, never be heard. But I learned something important. You don't need sight to see your dream. You only need heart." The crowd was silent, listening deeply. She continued, "Music is not about being perfect. It's about being real. When you play from truth, people will feel it. That's what matters." Her speech ended with a standing ovation. Afterward, many students came up to thank her. Some were blind, some deaf, some struggling in different ways, but all inspired. One girl said, "I used to be afraid to sing because people laughed at my voice. But after hearing you, I want to sing again." Amara smiled warmly. "Then sing, my dear. The world needs your voice." Over the years, she continued to build her foundation, helping thousands of children find music. The program spread to more than 20 countries, bringing instruments and teachers to those who had none. She would often receive recordings from children, their little hands hitting the wrong notes, their laughter filling the background. She loved every sound of it. But perhaps her greatest legacy came a few years later when a documentary about her life was released. It was called The Sound of Light. It told her journey from the little blind girl who was mocked to the woman who played for the world. The film was simple, honest, and deeply moving. People around the globe watched it and wrote letters saying how her story had given them hope to face their own struggles. When the film premiered, Amara sat in the front row beside her mother. Though she couldn't see the screen, she could hear the audience reacting. Gasps, tears, applause. At the end, as her final performance played on the big speakers, she reached out and took her mother's hand. "Do you hear that, Mama?" she whispered. Her mother smiled through tears. "I hear it, baby. That's the sound of your soul." In the years that followed, Amara's influence only grew, but she remained humble. She often said, "Fame fades, but kindness never does." She gave more time to teaching, mentoring, and performing for causes that mattered: hospitals, schools, and shelters. Her heart was always with those who needed light the most, and even when her health began to slow her down, her spirit never did. She continued to compose, often sitting by her piano late into the night, letting her fingers dance across the keys. She once told a friend, "As long as I can touch music, I'm alive." Her final public performance took place on a quiet spring evening in New York. The concert hall was full, the audience eager, but there was something different about this show. She told the crowd, "This is not a goodbye, it's just another song in a longer story." When she played, her touch was gentle yet powerful. The melody carried warmth, gratitude, and peace. It was a thank you to life, to love, to everyone who had believed in her. As the last note echoed through the hall, the crowd rose, clapping and crying. Some said they felt as if time had stopped again, just like that first night so many years ago. After the concert, Amara walked off stage, guided by her mother's hand. She turned back once and said softly, "If music has taught me anything, it's that darkness can sing too. You just have to listen long enough." And so, her story became more than just one of success. It became a reminder that beauty can come from pain, that strength can live in silence, and that even a blind girl with a broken piano can make the whole world see. Her music still plays in homes, schools, and hearts everywhere, a melody that never fades, whispering the same truth she always believed. You don't need eyes to see the light. You only need faith to find it.